Good afternoon, YouTube. I'm currently driving southbound on I-55 in Grundy County, Illinois. It is 2:19 p.m. on Thursday, April 22nd. Dropped my load of 4x4 lumber off in Indiana, and then I shot over by Chicago to pick up a load of bridge pilings that I'm taking to Kansas. Basically, these bridge pilings are just they're stamped out sheets of steel, and they weigh about 43,000 pounds, which is about what my lumber weighed. They are about as long as my lumber. However, they are only about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet tall off of the deck of my trailer. And if you remember, I talked about yesterday about how the lumber being so high, it will handle differently, and it does. It handles way differently. I have a very low profile load, and it just handles differently. Like I said, the geometry and the physics are just way different, and I actually kind of prefer the lower profile loads. Makes me feel a little bit more secure, especially in high winds. I've actually driven in wind before that normal semi-trailers, the box vans, the dry vans, could not drive in. Yeah, in fact, I mean, it was bad wind. Like it was all over the Midwest. It was just a couple months ago, maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, and there were even like a handful of tipped over truckers that did not stop. You can bet that if I was driving if I was pulling a dry van, I would definitely be stopping in winds about probably around 30 to 35 miles per hour, especially if I was light or empty. That's something that you guys may not know, all you non-truckers out there, that you see a truck go past you, just like this one's going past me right now. That's a dry van, and they could be empty, or they could be full. We don't know. That one had a seal on the back of it, so it probably is loaded. And you'd be amazed just how light sometimes those get. When I drove for my previous company, I would do runs all the time where the cargo weighed 6,000 to 8,000 to 15,000 pounds, and that's really not much at all. And I would haul that cargo down to Texas, and then I would return with an empty trailer, where I would drop it back off at the distribution center, and they would fill it up again for me to take, they would not fill it up again for me to take the next day, but they would use that trailer eventually. I would actually pick up a different trailer every day. In fact, for the company that I drove for, I was dedicated, which means I picked up and unloaded at the same place every single day. I picked up a trailer full of goods from the distribution center, took it down to another distribution center in Texas where they unloaded me, and then I would drive the trailer, or pull the empty trailer back to the distribution center, and I'd drop it off in the lot. And then the next day I would come back to that distribution center for another trailer and do the same thing over and over again. That's exactly what I did for that company for a while. And it was actually pretty easy, but it was really long days. But the pay for that job was super, super good. I was making 49 cents a mile total at that time, and I was getting 3,100 miles a week. And that was a guaranteed 3,100. Basically, if I worked, that's what I was getting, was 3,100 miles a week. And if I worked 52 weeks a year, then that would be well over $80,000 a year. I did the math before to see how much it was. I forget how much it was, but it was something like $85,000 a year. That's pretty good money, you know. Some people may not think it is, but for what I was doing, I thought it was. You know, I would go to the distribution center. I would hook up to a trailer. If that trailer passed my inspection, I'm on the road to Texas. If it doesn't pass my inspection, all I'm doing is doing things like airing up the tires, going and buying a new mud flap if the mud flaps aren't you know, like if I had a torn off mud flap, you know, things like that. So it's really super easy work for the amount of money that I was getting paid. Now, granted, I was working long hours. By the time I made it home, basically I would spend one night in Texas, and then the next night I would spend at home. But I was finding that you know, I wasn't actually getting a whole lot of home time because I was doing quite a bit of hours to get back. But anyway, so I have this bridge piling on my trailer right now, and like I said, it's pretty low profile and pretty heavy. Like I said, it's maybe 40 feet long total. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 8 bundles. Each bundle is about 20 feet long, and the total weight is about what did I say? I forget how much I said, but the bill of lading has it at 43,200 pounds. And I tell you what, looks can be deceiving because it's not that tall, and it's only 40 feet long, and it's not that wide. It's not even taking up the entire width of my trailer. I would have to say it's probably about 6 feet wide, maybe a little bit more than 6 feet. So basically 40 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 1.5 to 2 feet tall. Really, it's just 1.5 feet tall because it's sitting on lumber, so that way it can be unloaded with a forklift. So really, it is 1.5 feet tall. So you take those dimensions and you put 43,200 pounds in there, and like I said, it looks small, or it is small, but it is very heavy. So, all right. So I've been trying to think about how I wanted to talk about a homicide case. I want to give you guys tell you guys a story about a cold case murder that I worked. I've actually tried making this video a couple of times, which is why it took me so long to post the last one. But honestly, I didn't like the way they were coming out. It was just, I was kind of all over the place. And it's a case that has a lot of moving parts. It really does. But I'm going to give it another shot and see how we do. So, in 1981, there was a murder. It was investigated in 1981, investigated again in about 2000, and then investigated by me for probably the final time it will be investigated in about 2014, 2013, somewhere around in there. Basically, my sergeant came to me and said he wanted me to look into this cold case. And he thought that the victim's fiance knew more than what she was telling back in the day, and he wanted to see if I could convince her basically to tell me what really happened. And that was kind of the thought throughout the investigation. However, when I read the case, I clearly and quickly came to my conclusion anyway, that I think she told us everything that she had. Basically, the neighbor was a suspect, and she named him or at least had a very firm belief that he was the suspect, and told this to the investigators numerous times. So I don't think she was trying to hide anything. Anyway, I'm going to give you guys the setup of what the living conditions were like there. So they lived in a fourplex. Fourplex is basically like a duplex, except instead of having two individual units that are built onto each other, you have four. So you had four individual houses that are put together like a fourplex. Each place is 2 stories with a basement. And you walk in the main floor of the victim's apartment anyway, victim's unit, and you walk into the kitchen. If you were to keep walking, you walk back into the living area, and there is a sliding glass door to kind of go out to a backyard. It's kind of a communal, well, it wasn't kind of a communal, it was a communal backyard. Excuse me, basically a big courtyard. And they had about, well, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 or 6 of these fourplexes. So if you walk in the front door, you're in the kitchen area, and immediately to the left are stairs going up. Upstairs, you have 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. You have 1 bedroom, you have the 2 bedrooms, and then the bathroom is situated in between the bedrooms with a common entrance from the hallway. So each bedroom has a door, and the bathroom has a door in the little hallway there, and that's how you get into each room. If you go back downstairs and you're at the front door and you walk back towards the living room, if you turn to the left and do a little button hook turn, you will go downstairs into the basement. Some people would have had their basement set up as a family room. This particular unit, they had their basement set up as a bedroom. The residents of this unit was the murder victim, his fiance, and her 2 children. She had a girl and a boy, and they were pretty close in age. They were like 8 and 9 or 8 and 10, something like that. So they were very close in age. The little girl slept upstairs in her own bedroom, and the little boy slept down in the basement in the bedroom setup that they had down there. So the victim was supposed to have been at work this night, but he took off. I don't know why he took off, called in sick, took a vacation day, whatever, but he ended up being off. So him and his fiance are upstairs in their bed, and they're kind of down for the night. The kids are in their beds, and the fiance hears a noise. So she wakes up the victim and tells him that, hey, you need to go check out this noise. I want to say he kind of dismissed it at first, and then she heard it again, and she woke him up and was like, dude, you have got to go check this out. There's something going on. So he walks out of their bedroom, and I want to say she told me that he got into the bathroom or just outside the bathroom. But in any case, one of those 2 things definitely happened. He was either just outside of the bathroom or in the bathroom when he started being attacked. The suspect was stabbing him as he was backpedaling, trying to get away from him. They fell on the bed, and during the attack, the fiance also suffered a laceration from the suspect. Suspect takes off running, goes downstairs, and at that time, the little boy who sleeps in the bedroom had gotten up to either use the bathroom or get something to drink. I think it was to get a glass of water. And so he came up out of the basement, and he heard the commotion, so he starts walking up the stairs, and he gets ran over by the suspect. Okay, the suspect busted through the door to get out of the apartment, and within about 6 to 8 seconds, it might have even been 4 to 6 seconds, but it was a very short amount of time. The little boy said that he heard a door slam. So officers were called, and ambulance and all that were dispatched, and the victim ended up dying from his wounds. Now, something I will tell you about stab wounds is there are times when there won't be a whole lot of blood, because once you get stabbed and the knife gets pulled out, the wound will kind of seal shut and you will bleed out internally. There will be some blood, but not a whole lot if it's basically the right circumstances or the right situation. This one was because he was stabbed with a kitchen knife from a butcher block, basically the big butcher knife from a butcher block. So through the investigation, they found out that entry was made through the kitchen window. They actually found the kitchen window screen outside the house. So the suspect had removed the screen from the unit and opened up the unlocked kitchen window. That's actually very common. People leave their windows unlocked all the time. I will say I'm definitely guilty of that from time to time, and I've definitely been guilty of that in the past. But anyway, so entry is made through the kitchen window, which is why he actually had to bust through the front door to get out. And the evidence showed that the door was locked. The front door was locked when he busted through it, because basically the debris from him forcing the door open outward was all out. It wasn't in like it would be if he were to kick the door coming in. So, detectives had interviewed the neighbor, because that's who the fiance thought had done it. She named numerous times she thought it was the neighbor, thought the suspect looked like the neighbor. I mean, she all but made 100% positive identification. She definitely didn't say, I know it was the neighbor, but she definitely wanted to try and identify. She definitely thought it was the neighbor that did this. The boy's description when he got ran over was somebody with long, straight hair. The suspect did not have long, straight hair. However, you keep this in mind and it'll kind of piece together here in a little bit. So they interview the neighbors. It's a couple. She says she was upstairs in the bedroom and she heard the commotion and came out of the bedroom to see her husband on the main floor of their apartment or their unit, right about the bathroom area. His statement was he never heard anything and that he was actually downstairs in the basement watching television. So right there, their statements didn't quite add up. During the investigation, the suspect and his wife actually moved. I think that they were in the process of moving. Like, this move would have happened regardless, so it wasn't suspicious that they moved. But they moved from the west part of town to the southeast part of town. during the investigation. So detectives ended up serving 2 search warrants, one on their unit in the fourplex and one in the house that they moved to in the southeast part of town. The evidence that they collected, let me rewind a little bit. So during the investigation, like the next morning, I think it was, a maintenance man from the apartment called in that he found a knife laying in the grass. Detectives respond, and sure enough, there's a butcher knife, and they collect it, and that's when they realize exactly what the murder weapon is. It was obvious that this was the murder weapon. So then they actually serve warrants at some point in the investigation, because like they didn't move like the next day. All this took place over the course of about a week or two, but they ended up serving in search warrants on their unit in the fourplex and their house on the southeast part of town. What they ended up collecting was a butcher block that was in the apartment still, I believe. Like they were in the process of moving when the search warrant was served. But they found a butcher block missing that butcher knife. And not only that, but that butcher knife, like they had the whole set. It was a whole branded set. And it was missing that butcher knife. And the butcher knife that was found was the same brand of the butcher block and other knives that they had in that block. In the house that they had moved to on the southeast part of town, they found some wigs. Remember me saying that the suspect had long straight hair? Well, one of the wigs they found was a long straight haired wig. And one thing that the suspect's wife always, like she always stuck to, was she didn't know anything about those wigs. She told me she wears wigs, but not those kinds. And those wigs definitely were not hers. And she knew nothing about them. So she was always consistent about that. So the case in 1981, I believe, with that evidence, I think would have been prosecutable. You know, there was just a lower standard in 1981. I mean, it is what it is. Their investigations were way smaller. The murder book, basically, it's the whole case file was very small. It was in one 3-ring binder, I believe, and I've had investigations, homicide cases that were in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes and boxes of binders. I had one investigation that, gosh, I bet it had 20 binders, maybe even more. I mean, it was just crazy. Maybe I'll tell you about that investigation one of these days soon. But you want to talk about investigation, got a lot of moving parts. That one does. But anyway, so investigations were done a little bit simpler back then. They didn't have a lot of things that we would test, that we would do now, like DNA testing and things like that. But the suspect was never charged. And honestly, I thought it would be a slam dunk case for 1981. So while I'm reviewing this case, I remember, and it's not that I remembered, I actually, in 1981, we had a little girl go missing. A young girl, probably like 9 to 11 years old, go missing. And it was a very big deal back then, and it still is a very big deal. It's been actively investigated from that day, from like 1981 to till I retired, and it probably still is going to be investigated one day by other detectives. So when I was reviewing this report, I came to a conclusion that, or when I was reviewing the homicide report, I came to a conclusion that the suspect, who I believe was the neighbor, was there for the little girl. One thing I forgot to tell you about the suspect, he's a pedophile. He's actually currently in prison right now for impregnating his very young daughter. Like, she was really young when he sexually assaulted her and impregnated her. And he's doing something like 50, 60 years or something like that. Like, he'll never get out of prison. So I knew that he was a pedophile. I knew he liked little girls. And I believe that he was there to either kidnap the little girl or to try and do something to her in the house. So then, as I'm reading the case, I'm like, hey, when did this other little girl go missing? So I start researching that and find out, oh, hey, yeah, it definitely was in 1981 that she went missing. And she went missing 2 or 3 weeks, I think it was. It might have been 4, but it was a very short amount of time. She went missing from around the same neighborhood that he moved into. I want to say he moved into a house that was maybe 5 or 6 blocks, maybe, from where she lived. And if I remember right, she was actually abducted a couple of blocks from where she actually lived. She was out playing with some kids, and she was abducted in 1981 and never found. So I believe that he could be a good suspect for this as well. Now, I will tell you, I don't have any time committed to investigating that missing person, the kidnapping case. And there are 2 very experienced, very seasoned, and very good detectives that did investigate that case, and they each had their own suspect. And the suspect, I want to say each suspect has family members that believe they are the suspect. So even some of these people's family believe that they are the suspect, and these suspects aren't related at all. Like, they just basically, one detective thinks John did it, and another detective thinks Joe did it. Well, I'm here to tell you that I think that Rick did it. But anyway, I just don't have the time invested that they did. So they're the ones that's going to know about the case. So I went back to the original detective that investigated the homicide case, and I asked him about that missing girl and if this guy was ever a suspect. He did tell me that he was a person of interest, but they just could never figure it out. All they know is she was last seen walking away with a male, and that was it. With an adult male, and that was it. They just didn't have any other information. A body was never found or anything. So anyway, when the murder case, the cold case, was investigated in 2000, the detective that investigated that case had the screen window that was still in property as evidence, had it fingerprinted. And this guy's fingerprint was lifted off of what would have been the inside portion of the screen window. Okay? And once again, in 2000, even with that, even with the knife, the butcher block, we had the butcher block. And let me tell you, when there's a murder, we keep the evidence forever. And I had to go through every single piece of that evidence to catalog it and make sure that we had it at one point. And we keep it forever. I actually took the knife and had it processed for DNA evidence, and it came back that it did have the victim's DNA on it. Unfortunately, the suspect's DNA was not found on it. I trust that the lab, did their best, but unfortunately we were just unable to identify any other DNA other than the victim. So that's that case. I presented it to our county attorney, and they decided that they could not prosecute, and they declined to prosecute the case. I did have some help with the case at one point, because the county attorney had hired an investigator, and he actually assisted me in investigating the case. And he actually has his own theory of the case, which is actually very plausible. He believes that that the suspect was there for the fiance because there was something about this guy that I want to say he had posters of women, like the centerfolds of adult magazines, hanging on his wall, and basically like had holes punched in them or something along those lines. He just felt there was a hatred of women, and that he was there to do something to the fiance. So anyway, that's the case. I think I did a little bit better job than before when I was trying to explain it. If you guys have any questions about that case, give me a shout. If you have any criticism, any pointers, any suggestions, let me know, and hit that like button and share my videos if you think I'm putting out some good content. Help me out. I'm just trying to make the best content that I can. And until next time, you have a good day.